Just before we start, want to let you know it's going to run probably about 10, 15 minutes. So hopefully you've have been forewarned that it's going to take that long. So first, let's go to the introductions. I have on the call with me here, or on this in the seminar here, Jason Henderson. Jason is an advisor to Pegasus One, specializing in security and also cloud management. His actual day job is leading the security solutions team that focuses on federal government agencies for Microsoft. Um, I'm Stefan Beely, as I said before. I'm the CTO at Pegasus One, and my background is in various technology roles, including fractional CTO. So our agenda today is going to cover the following topics. Why is being well architected important? As in any environment, you have to consider the design parameters that you're going to have to create a well architected application. You want to ensure optimal performance, security, cost efficiency. With cloud applications, you can also take advantage of additional tools that you might not have, at your disposal. So we'll look at trying to use some of those. And then we'll talk about the value of well-architected cloud apps. As we said before, you know, security, optimal performance, perhaps increased agility, scalability, also resiliency, and hopefully that all results in improved customer satisfaction and a competitive advantage. Um, we also want to talk about overcoming workload quality inhibitors with best practices. In this part, we're going to actually explore the best practices for designing and implementing these well-architected applications. And then we'll discuss the strategies to overcome the workload quality inhibitors to ensure a successful cloud transformation. Finally, how to take everything that we've talked about and actually get started on it and do it. So we'll provide actionable steps and resources to help you begin your journey towards building well-architected cloud applications. And this will include recommendations on how to do assessments, training, and of course, how to collaborate with expert partners. Thank you for your attention, and we hope you find this presentation informative and valuable. So at this point, I'd like to hand it over to Jason, and he's going to talk about the specifics. Go ahead, Jason.
Hey, thanks again. Happy to be here talking about why it's so important to have a well-architected cloud environment, talk about some of the implications that we see when some design considerations might be overlooked or really just don't really have a good advisor as you taking you through this process, the kind of things that can happen. So why is it so important to be well-architected within the cloud? Well, obviously, as you see here on, as we point out on the slide, there's possible security implications, cost, performance, reliability type of issues. To really illustrate that, I think it's always interesting to hear about some real life stories that have happened. So I'm going to take you through a couple quick two customer scenarios that we've seen in my job with Microsoft over the last few months that sort of highlight some of the security implications that we had seen, as well as some cost implications that we've seen real life customers deal with. So the first one, recently we saw a customer that had a have had a cloud environment up and running for quite some time. They were bought into a whole zero trust stack of security tools. On the Microsoft 365 side, had every tool that you would need to alert you for various features, and they ended up having a scenario where they were doing some testing with an Azure web application, and it wasn't an application that would go live, but it uses their URLs as their public facing endpoint that anybody on the public internet could hit as they were doing these testing. And one thing that when they were done with this test, they actually went and deleted the web app, but within the cloud, the DNS entry itself is actually a cloud resource that also needs to be deleted. So one thing they did not do was go clean up that DNS entry, which is something that at Microsoft we've termed a dangling DNS entry. What ended up happening once they still had this dangling DNS entry out there, it had been didn't have anything behind it for I think about 7 to 8 months. But a nation state bad actor from another country went through, found that dangling DNS entry, and actually mapped that DNS entry to their website. That when folks tried to navigate to that URL, which was occurring, it would actually, open up the door to hacking those individual users that would come into that DNS entry, that would go to that URL and go to a bad actor that was in a different country.
Yeah,
Now,
Jason, that would probably result in some negative publicity for that company also, correct?
absolutely, yeah. It's
Yeah.
because essentially what that did is it took that organization's customers and made them vulnerable if they had tried to access this DNS this URL, which it was I won't say the name, but let's say it's let's just make up a contoso.com you end of the URL. A lot of customers would still go to something like that through some sort of search engine, hitting it and then finding it and going
Yeah.
to it. So this did affect some customers, and it wasn't really that great. Now this could have been avoided because they actually owned a feature that was called Defender for App Service, which would have actually alerted them to this dangling DNS entry after deleting the actual app service. But it was one of those little things they overlooked because it was just something that was overlooked. They didn't have somebody there to help them design all this stuff together and take advantage of the things that they had actually purchased from Microsoft. Um, and then another quick, a more of a cost implication that we see as most people that are looking at the cloud have kind of figured out by this point, when you're looking at IaaS and PaaS providers, let's call it Google Cloud or Azure, Microsoft Azure, or AWS, it's really the way that the bills run for those things is you basically pay for the resources that you use in real time. If you turn on a big resource, you pay for that at the end of the month. It's really pay for what you use, right? So another issue we saw is that there was a customer that was really their normal spend was projected to be about $20,000 a month for the application that they had in production. Uh, and then one month they ended up getting hit with a bill that was over $100,000. So 5 times more than they had budgeted, and really that they had the money they had put down on the actual enrollment itself. And quickly it was like, what happened, right? So when they looked at it, what ended up happening was they had an engineer set up a fairly large size virtual machine to do some testing, some modeling, and all of that, and then essentially never deleted that for the month and just left it running. Uh, when we looked at that, it was obviously a sticker shock for the customer. Something that again could have been avoided with proper advisement and overlooking and sort of teaching them how to do this in a better way. The way that it could have been avoided is with a resource policy that essentially goes in and says, these are the things we know we're going to use for our environment, these resources, and locking down every other resource in the cloud marketplace to only allow the certain SKUs that they knew they were going to be using, so that they wouldn't be able to go put up a gigantic resource like that. And that's a fairly easy thing to put together. That again, as part of an advisement type of scenario, let's say with Pegasus One, one of the things they're going to look at is the governance of your environment and how you're going to stand up the framework that locks down these types of things and prevents these types of things from happening. Another issue that arose was that they also could have caught this earlier in the month but they also hadn't configured what was called at that it's an Azure customer. Obviously, the tool is called Azure Cost Management. That as soon as you just turn that thing on, it actually looks at your environment and gives you a projection for what you'll see at the end of the month, and alerts you to essentially what your cost is currently and actually models that out for the rest of the month. And was a service that would have been free to them if they just needed to turn it on. That also would have caught it earlier in the month and they would have been able to figure that out. So again, just another scenario where a few things were overlooked and caused a fairly large bill. And then Microsoft and the customer had to work together to figure out how the best to handle that. So those are some things that could go south pretty quickly and without the proper advisement. So what's the value of having a well-architected framework? Well, you avoid everything that we just talked about.
Yeah.
To the best of your ability. Obviously, nothing's ever perfect. This is the way of the world. But there is a lot when you start looking at all the things that it takes to jump into the cloud. There are a lot of things that you can do. So when you have a well-architected framework, you're taking advantage of these free resources such as cost management thing. AWS has a similar thing as Azure does for that. You're taking advantage of policies that lock down certain type of SKUs in your environment. You're taking advantage of security tooling that you might own. You're doing all these things. You're going to lessen the likelihood that you're going to have massive losses and expenses. You're going to know that you have a better visibility and any kind of security incidents that might take place, as well as just have essentially a better level of trust or that warm fuzzy feeling that day to day you've got a control over your environment and you actually know what's going on. So how can we overload? So how can we overcome some of these quality inhibitors that we see inside of cloud environments? Cost optimization, I think the biggest one, as we highlight here in these boxes, is one of the biggest quality inhibitors that we see is having an unclear or underutilized or orphaned resources, like that dangling DNS entry. That doesn't really cost a lot of money, but the use case that we talked about for a brief second there, with the cost one, having a gigantic VM running that nobody's actually using, that those types of things are gonna affect your cost. For the operational aspect of this, not having any visibility into the root cause for events, that's also something that we see is very common. And a lot of times there's a lot of resources and tools that the customer has at their fingertips to be able to actually see that level of visibility. And these are things that a good partner can help you to set up. As far as, and then of course the performance, efficiency, and reliability, scaling and disaster recovery go hand in hand often. There's a lot of times where we see a lot of customers that maybe they start getting a lot more traffic than they typically do at various times of day, and they can't scale and the environment goes down. There's a lot of best practices to be able to scale on demand that some customers aren't mature enough to really understand how to do. And then same thing goes for disaster recovery. When these things fail, how quickly can you get back up and running? And what does that mean for your organization when you fail? Are you losing money by the minute, every minute that you're down? Are you not servicing a critical capability that may not have something to do with money, but especially, like we talked about earlier, I work with the federal government. Some of these things are national security issues if a system is down, right? So disaster recovery and scaling can be a big thing in that type of market, right? So what are some of the best practices that you can use to cover some of those issues? Go back here. Look at all the different features that your cloud vendor offers you, right? So within the cost optimization, we talked about in Azure, the Azure cost management, but also moving from like an IaaS environment where you're running VMs into a platform as a service, a lot of times saves customers money and it gives them a greater ability to be able to scale. But simple things, right? Like shutting down resources that you're not using, resizing to the right size of resource for your application.
So, Jason, how difficult would it be for a say mid-sized organization to go in and start using all these tools themselves? I mean, it's not like there's a lot of different tools. Is it as simple as just turning them on and we're going to get immediate benefit, or is it a little trickier than that?
So I would say it's a lot of these resources are very easy to go just turn on, but there's so many of them that stitching them all together into a well-architected framework for a whole cloud environment can be very tricky. especially for folks
Uh,
that are new in their cloud journey, maybe coming from a traditionally on-premises environment where they're hosting applications in an on-premise environment. That's very different than operating in the cloud. It can get very tricky to pull all these things together or even just know about all the things that are at their fingertips, because it is very different than on premises where everything you have at your fingertips you have to actively go buy in real time. And so, but whereas when you go to the cloud, a lot of times that you're putting money into the cloud and then you have hundreds of resources and types of things you can use at your fingertips. You may not know everything, which so it can be very difficult to pull it all together in a succinct way.
mm.
And so it's very typical for our customers, for Microsoft, to look to expert partners to be able to do this, and especially, and the a lot of customers are looking at have multi-cloud environments. Maybe they have AWS or maybe they have Azure. Maybe they're looking at Office 365 or Google Workspaces, and so partners that can have expertise across all of those, such as Pegasus One, become very valuable to the customer, to be able to advise them on how to do all this correctly, hold their hand in the beginning, teach them how to fish essentially. But also, there's a lot of customers that have gigantic, large scale deployments, multiple applications, and bring on a partner such as Pegasus One for a long term engagement to help them operate it day to day as well. So how can you get started? Again, so this is this is a Microsoft slide. So this has some of the stuff that you can deal with the Microsoft, which is Pegasus One is a partner to Microsoft, but there's similar things again with AWS and all that. Review your cloud vendors, all the tools that they give you. There's a lot of free resources out there to help you read about how to jump into the cloud. Look at different workshops and all those types of things. There's typically a lot of stuff, but I would absolutely, one thing I would do is look at Pegasus One to come in and assist you in your cloud journey as
So,
well.
so Jason, I have a question for you. Of the customers that you have seen that have been in a cloud environment and working in a cloud environment for a while, how many of them actually benefit from having, say, a consultant come in and who understands a well architected cloud? How beneficial have you seen that be for those companies that haven't employed or hired a specialist?
Yeah, I mean, so I do see a lot of customers that go into it and try to and stand up an environment on their own,
Yeah.
and get rocking and rolling, that have benefited greatly. Pretty much, I will say that 100% of the time that even a customer that's already in the cloud pulls in a partner such as Pegasus One to come in and do an assessment of the current environment, sees value right off the
Mm.
bat, whether that's saying, "Yeah, you guys went out and killed it. Awesome job. This is perfect." Having that, again, that warm fuzzy feeling that things are going okay is always feels good. As well as it's kind of like when you buy a house, you go through your inspection, you have a third party inspector come out and they say, "Oh yeah, the house is good to go." That makes you feel better, right? But I would say more often than not, they do find all kinds of different ways that they can actually improve the environment. Just like when you get an inspection on a house and they say, "Oh, the roof has a hole up here that you can't see because you live down here. That should get fixed." All those types of things. Very similar here. And so, yeah, if you're already in the cloud, it's still, I would say, extremely critical to bring in, a partner such as us with Pegasus One to take a look at it, assess it, and see if there's anything that we can do to save, cost savings, performance, make you more secure, all those different things that come with a well-architected framework.
All right. Well, I think that brings us to the end. And I'd like to say thank you very much for listening to our presentation. Hopefully, it was valuable to you. And of course, reach out to Pegasus One if you have any consulting needs for your cloud framework. And thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks. It was great to be here today. Thank you.